On this episode of the Turnbuckle, Brock Lesnar returns on Raw, and so do the Good Brothers. AEW did a hotel room wellness check on MJF during the Double or Nothing weekend. WWE has interest in Matt Taven, and Bronson Reed could be in line for a WWE return. Folks, it's time to hit a tilt-a-whirl head scissors into some wrestling news because it's time for the Turnbuckle. Gotta make sure I hit the right button this time, okay? Because last time I did it, I accidentally stopped recording. Brock Lesnar returned to WWE for the first time since SummerSlam on Monday's Raw, attacking Bobby Lashley in the process. Lesnar's unannounced return came prior to a scheduled Lashley vs. Rollins United States title match. Lesnar entered, greeted Lashley on the microphone, then laid out the U.S. champion with F5s and a suplex. Lesnar then used a Kimura on Lashley before leaving. Lashley went on with a scheduled title defense, and he lost the U.S. title to Rollins. So this is good, and the reason why it's good, so there's two things. Brock is coming back for a reason, and Lashley is now in a program with Brock. So it's okay that he lost the title because it essentially means that like something else is gonna happen from this. So normally, okay, in the Vince era, I would have been upset because I'd have been like, oh, they just made him drop the title and now that's it for him. That's it. He's going down to the bottom of the roster now. But it seems like he's in a very compelling program with Brock. And if there's anybody that you want to be in a program with, especially if you're Bobby Lashley, it's Brock Lesnar. So I feel as though that this is going to bode well for the future. And now Seth is the U.S. champion. So now, that pretty much speaks for itself. You know, also, Seth Rollins is officially now a two-time modern-day Grand Slam champion, and he's right up there with The Miz, and I'm really happy about that. The Good Brothers also came back. I'm more excited for Brock Lesnar's return than I am about the Good Brothers. I know the Good Brothers are really good, and they've been all around the world, and they're in the Bullet Club and everything, but for some reason, I just can't, I don't know why, but for some reason, I'm just like, I'm not as enthralled about the Good Brothers returning than I am about Brock Lesnar returning. And I don't really think that that's a dig at the Good Brothers' character and their overall ability as a whole. I just feel as though that, like, when they were here, they weren't really doing anything groundbreaking, you know, but then you could just chalk that up to the writing, you know, and all the stuff that the writers were essentially making them do. Like that segment where they came out and, what were they talking about? I think they were talking about, I forget what they were talking about. Remember when they came out in like lab coats and shit, and they were like talking shit about somebody, and that segment kind of bombed. I don't really fully remember the segment, to be honest. That's about, to be fair though, that's the most I remember them for. That's pretty much it. Carl Anderson and Doc Ellis are the latest to return to WWE appearing on Monday's Raw. During a Judgment Day segment, AJ Styles came out and told Finn Balor that he needed friends and family by his side. Styles acted like he was about to join the Judgment Day, but as he hugged Balor, he said that he wasn't talking about the Judgment Day. That was when Anderson and Gallows came to the ring and got into a brawl with Judgment Day, sending them out of the ring. This brawl wasn't too bad. It was a brawl. There's not really much else to write about. You know, I'm more curious about Elias coming back. I remember reading that they didn't want Elias to come back yet until his beard fully grew back. So I really like that. Yeah, I feel as though they have more in store for... Okay, I can't even say that because it's the Triple H era. So literally anything that I say could easily be refuted of like, oh, they're probably not going to do this or nothing's probably going to happen with that. And it probably is. I mean, it makes sense that they're building, right? It makes sense to build to the next pay-per-view. That's what you do. You build to the next pay-per-view, and then there's a crescendo at the pay-per-view, and then you just build to the next one. So I'm assuming they're building to, like... Okay, I actually don't know what pay-per-view they're building to next. I genuinely have no idea, but considering the foot that they started off on, you know, I'm looking forward to whatever pay-per-view that they go through with, you know. Next, we're going to talk about AEW and how they did a hotel room wellness check on MJF. Speaking on Sam Roberts' podcast, the always in character star said AEW lost $10,000 on that Saturday when he missed a meet and greet at the company's fan fest and no one can get in touch with him. AEW lost $10,000 on Saturday. Okay. When I stayed in said hotel room, they did a wellness check on me, and the AEW security, this is a very true story, tried to break my door down. At the time, I had already left. They did the check. He literally went to kick my door down on a wellness check. That was everybody's fear, he said. The story was confirmed by Dave Meltzer and is not at work. While the full details of what happened that weekend are still unclear, especially whether MJF had a plane ticket out of town already purchased, MJF showed up Sunday's Double or Nothing and lost convincingly to Wardlow. He then appeared at the following Dynamite and cut a scathing promo on the company. The story upon his return, and that has been repeated since then, is that MJF demanded more money. In subsequent interviews, Connors refused to answer any specific questions about what happened. MJF also refused comment on the plane ticket story, saying he couldn't confirm or deny whether one was bought. I think that he didn't show up to the meet and greet for a reason. I think he genuinely did not want to show up to the meet and greet just to really hammer it home, like, hey, you can't just sit here and not pay me enough. I'm gonna fucking, I don't know how to put it, but I'm basically gonna like show you why I need to be paid more by not showing up to a meet and greet, which if anything would like hurt his character even more. But then he showed up to the match, did the job, got powerbombed, and that was it. So, at the end of the day, I really don't think he bought the ticket. I think that he's letting that be left up in the air for speculation on purpose. I think that it's one of those questions that nobody's ever going to be able to answer, like who lifted the title when Stone Cold was reaching up for it, when he was climbing the ladder and all that, and a bunch of other unanswered questions that wrestling historians are not going to be able to figure out. I don't think he bought the ticket. The wellness thing, I mean, I can understand why. Did they need to kick the door down? No. But they did it because they were like, well, he could potentially no-show this pay-per-view, and we don't want that to happen. We need to, well, okay. I was about to say, oh, well, maybe something happened to him. Maybe he's passed out or something. Maybe something serious happened. So we're going to like, kick the door down just to check on him. I mean, you know what? Yeah, in that instance, that would make sense. Like, hey, this is now a safety thing. We're going to kick the door down for your well-being because we don't think that you are capable of answering the door yourself. You might have fallen over in the shower, or you might have, like, knocked your head on something and be, like, knocked out in the living room. So we're kicking the door down just to make sure you're okay. But, I mean, that's the best that I can come up with. That's the best that I can assume is that they assume that he was hurt, you know? So, I mean, that's really the only reason that I can give. That's pretty much it. Next, we're going to be talking about WWE's interest in Matt Taven. Talking on Monday's Wrestling Observer Radio, Meltzer talked about several talents that wrapped up with Impact Wrestling after this weekend's shows. A list includes Mia Yim, Matt Taven, Vincent, Mike, and Maria Kanellis-Bennett. He said WWE's interested in the 37-year-old Taven, a former tag team champion in Impact and NJPW, and Ring of Honor Grand Slam champion. It's unknown if that interest is for the main roster or NXT. He speculated that at NJPW might also have interest in Taven, Bennett, and Kanellis-Bennett because of their history there. Taven, Bennett, Kanellis-Bennett, and Vincent will be written off Impact over the next 2 weeks based on Saturday's Bound for Glory taping. Again, I don't really know a whole lot about Matt Taven. I'm not going to lie. I don't really know a whole lot about him. I haven't seen a lot of his matches. So I can't really sit here and make the call of like, oh, this is a good idea or a bad idea. But considering his credentials, considering that he is a former tag team champion in Impact and NJPW, I can't talk. And he's a Ring of Honor Grand Slam champion. I mean, not only did the people who were there had faith in him to a certain extent, but he also has held gold, so he knows his way around the ring, and he knows how to put on a decent show. So I can't really sit here and say, oh, they're wasting it. Yeah, I can't really say anything. Really, all I can do is sit here and wait and see, first of all, what they have in store for him, and second of all, if he's actually, where he's actually going to go. Because I have no idea. I can't really sit here and be like, oh, he's going to show up here or there or anywhere. I genuinely don't know, so we're going to have to wait and see. Finally, this is actually a quick one, I'm not going to lie. Bronson Reed, not the article, I meant the episode as a whole. Bronson Reed could be in line for a WWE return. Okay, so Bronson Reed was released by WWE last year in a move that certainly shocked fans. Reed was let go because the company believed Reed simply didn't fit the new version of NXT. This was weeks before NXT was going to change. This was like a couple weeks before that. Reed previously revealed that WWE told him to smile more. Following his WWE release, Bronson Reed changed his name to Jonah and has been tearing it up in the independent circuit. He was also the NXT North American champion, but not for a long time. Since his departure, he has been a bona fide star in NJPW, tearing through the ranks and facing the biggest talent yet. Recently, Okada defeated Jonah in a rematch at NJPW Declaration of Power in the co-main event of the show. They then did a handshake. While speaking on Wrestling Observer Radio, Dave Meltzer noted that Jonah could be making his way back to WWE. When Okada versus Jonah was over, they did a handshake, and I don't know, they didn't talk finale, and they didn't say he was leaving, but kind of the way that handshake, WWE's going after Jonah, and they won him. And even though Jonah was getting a great push here, this was actually the first pinfall loss he's taken in New Japan. The handshake was kind of weird. It was almost like you think maybe he's going back to WWE, but I don't know if that's the case or not. I don't know either, Dave. I actually don't know either. I mean, the only person we can really ask is Jonah, Bronson Reed, right? the way that when they released him, it was very strange. It was the same thing that they did when they did with Samoa Joe. It was very strange. It didn't make any sense. If I remember correctly, he won the North American title, and then he dropped it, and then I think he was talking, he was like, hey, I'm leaving NXT, and then everybody thought he was going to show up to the main roster, and then I think he was on main event, and then they released him. And everybody was like, I don't understand why you did that. That doesn't make any sense. He was destined to be on the main roster for a myriad of reasons, and then he wasn't, right? So it's kind of weird that they released him for that specific reason. But again, that was the Vince McMahon era. And Vince would hire and fire people for really dumb reasons, to be fairly honest with you. So when you hear that Jonah got fired because he, quote, didn't smile more, and then you remember that this was when Vince McMahon was still in power, it makes sense that that's why he got let go. But, I mean, I keep talking about this because it's true. The WWE is not the be-all and end-all anymore. Maybe back in like the early 10s or the early thousands, yeah, WWE was the only monopoly that wrestling had for a time. But now there's a bunch of different other promotions you can go to. So when you look at somebody like Bronson Reed, when you look at guys like Matt Taven and Maria Kanellis and all that sort of stuff, it's like, yeah, they can go back to WWE, but they don't really have to. They don't have to. If he really wants to, he can go to AEW or Impact or Ring of Honor or PWG or whatever. He can, well, okay, well, yeah, he could. You could argue that fucking PWG and Ring of Honor are like the indie shows. But if he wants to go back there, then he's more than welcome to. I don't really see an issue as to why, like, he shouldn't do that, you know? So, ultimately, it's really just up to Bronson and what he wants to do. You know what I mean? So, at the end of the day, we just got to see what he's going to do. What do we talk about? Not a lot. Well, yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. We talked about a lot, actually. Okay, I feel like I didn't speak enough on the whole Lesnar thing, even though I feel like I did. But, like, you know what I mean? So Lesnar's back, and so are the Good Brothers. I'm more excited for Lesnar than I am about the Good Brothers. I'm more excited for the program that Lesnar is going to be in with Bobby Lashley. And I'm less excited about the program that the OC are going to be in with Judgment Day. I'm not saying it's going to be bad, but I'm saying I'm looking a little bit more towards Brock Lesnar versus Bobby Lashley. Because I'm curious, because Lesnar doesn't just show up on Raw. This is not a thing that Lesnar does. Unless it's like a big title match, unless it's a really, really big, impactful storyline, Lesnar's not going to be here. So the fact that Lesnar is here and the fact that it was not announced, it sort of is giving a bit of an inkling like something is going to happen. I feel like this, and especially because Bobby just dropped the title. So this has nothing to do with anything now. This is just Brock Lesnar and Bobby Lashley duking it out, you know? So I'm really curious to see where the storyline is going to go and how it's going to evolve and what it's going to turn into. Still considering the storyline with the OC and everything. But again, I really do not see the storyline with the OC getting any bigger than Brock Lesnar and Bobby Lashley, you know? AEW did a hotel wellness check on MJF. It's a wellness check. Literally, I'm reading it now. It's a wellness check. They kicked the door down because they probably thought that he was unconscious or dead, so they wanted to kick the door down to make sure that he was safe. I feel like MJF is wording it in the sense of like, oh, they were upset with me, so they were gonna. Maybe I'm reading it wrong because I didn't listen to it. I am just reading it. Reading it I feel like I'm supposed to interpret it as they were gonna kick the door down and then drag him to the show. I don't think that was the case. I think that they were just really worried about him and they wanted to make sure that he was okay, which he was. WWE is interested in Matt Taven. I feel like that can mean anything. That can mean anything, you know? We have to really wait and see what he's going to do. You know what I mean? We have to wait and see if he's actually going to show up to Raw or SmackDown or anything, because they could have interest in him all they want. That doesn't necessarily mean he's going to sign with them. The same with Bronson Reed. They could have an interest in Bronson Reed, but if Bronson Reed doesn't want to go to the WWE and he wants to go to AEW, or he wants to go to Ring of Honor, or if he wants to go to Impact, WWE can't do anything about that unless WWE buys out whatever Impact or Ring of Honor or whatever are like offering him. But other than that, they really can't say anything. So ultimately, we're just gonna have to wait and see what happens, folks. That's gonna do it for this episode. I really hope you guys enjoyed this episode because I certainly enjoyed making it. And as always, big hugs all around.